After wrapping up the last video about my hopes for Elder Scrolls 6, I started on a script for a video about why the main quest of Skyrim was terribly written. However, I soon realised that I was just spelling out things people knew already, that the story lacked tension, it was poorly paced in parts, and had numerous other problems that stopped people from playing it beyond getting the full unrelenting force shout. And I should know, I had to slog through it during my Dragon Priest Let's Play. And don't get me wrong, the first act of the main quest up until you defeat Selachnia, along with Delphine, is actually pretty good. The mystery surrounding the dragons is well set up, the danger they present to the people of Skyrim is made clear by the destruction of Helgen, the Western Watchtower, and the near destruction of Kynesgrove, and the Dragonborn has been introduced to all the major players in the story in the Blades, Balgruuf, the Greybeards, and of course Alduin himself. But then the main story devolves into a thinly veiled series of fetch quests before ultimately culminating in an underwhelming boss fight against Alduin where you defeat the main bad guy at the end of Act 2. And as a result, make the third act almost feel like an afterthought to pad the runtime of an already shallow questline. So how do we go about revising and fixing such a story? Well, I propose one change to the main story of the Elder Scrolls Skyrim that would elevate and improve the questline while keeping the tension and threat of the dragons growing as you progress through the story. And that change is to have the dragons actively oppose the Dragonborn. One of the things that Skyrim did poorly was show the dragons as being a threat to the lives of everyone in the province beyond the first act. Remember, all but a couple of dragons serve Alduin, and his goal is to subjugate the races of Tamriel. The danger should be at the forefront of everyone's minds as they try to go about surviving in a dragon-filled world. The potential end of the world is here, and the general populace of Skyrim just goes, meh, they're a bit of a pest, but we're fine. And from a story perspective, that isn't fine. There's no pressure at all on the Dragonborn to actually go after these dragons, as they are shown to present little to no threat to anyone in Skyrim. And I get it, that's part of how Skyrim works as a sandbox style game, but from a story perspective, giving the dragons no goal or drive means that there is no tension and no danger presented in the main quest. Despite what some of the characters like Paarthurnax say, the entire Defeat Alduin questline feels like an obligation, as you know you're destined to defeat the dragons, so why not go and build a house, or kill an emperor, or collect all the Dragon Priest masks? No one's going to care. Life in Skyrim with dragons will go on just fine. But by having the dragons try to stop the Dragonborn from completing his mission and killing Alduin, they're suddenly no longer just another animal in the game to kill, but they're the enemy that stands between you and your mission. This was actually done somewhat in both the Dawnguard and Dragonborn questlines, with Durnevir and Krozohar both being tied directly to the questlines of those DLCs. So how would this improve the main questline? Well, for one, all the dragon encounters no longer feel random as you progress through the storyline. They make you think, oh, they've tried to catch me unawares, smart move. Already, the dragons seem smarter from this change alone. And you could even take it further by having scripted assaults on towns and cities. With named dragons already existing throughout Skyrim, you could use them as leaders of an assault on, say, Whiterun, that's triggered in-game by being past the Selachnia fight and being, say, level 15. Throw in a couple lines from the dragons about their plans for the races, and now they're a much more present threat to you and the people of Skyrim, and this could be made even more apparent if NPCs died during the attack. Now, the threat is a serious one. This could also be used to flesh out some of the boring second act. Take the leveled dragon that is assaulting Karthspire when you arrive to get to Alduin's Wall, which we know holds the secret to defeating Alduin. If instead the dragon, or dragons potentially under this new main quest, are specifically there to stop you from getting at the wall, this sense of purpose from the dragons gives the player something to overcome and surpass if they wish to continue the quest. It gives the story an element of nuance and depth it just did not have before. You could even have one of the dragons land in front of you and give a warning to the Dragonborn before the fight. Perhaps something along the lines of, Alduin would have you dead, Dovahkiin. The wall will finally be buried this day, and you will not find that which you have come here to learn. Die now, and await your end in Sovngarde. This would do a number of things. 1. It makes more of the dragons feel intelligent, and now, rather than being told the dragons are smart, we are being shown that through a nameless dragon holding a conversation with the player. 2. It shows the Dragonborn that the dragons are actively trying to stop him from fulfilling his destiny, rather than just waiting around to be killed. After all, your character is the only one that actually poses a threat to the dragons, so why would they be hiding in their roosts when they could instead be doing everything in their power to make sure you never succeed? And 3. It saves the horror of the second act and reaffirms the belief that the main quest cannot be taken lightly. Now, instead of doing 4 fetch quests in a row, you are in a race against time as the dragons seek out ways to stop you from completing your mission. It gives urgency to a story that desperately needs it, and presents the dragons as a real threat to the Dragonborn. You could even change Volthiol to be a guardian of the Elder Scroll instead of just a random dragon, giving him a sense of purpose and a reason for being in Blackreach beyond making for a cool Easter egg. And so that brings us to the Alduin fight. We've defeated some of his underlings, we've shown ourselves to the dragons that we are not someone to be trifled with by defeating Mermulnir, Salaknir, Volthiol, and the ones from Karspire so far on our journey through the main quest. Due to the dragons actively opposing us, we now have a situation where the dragons cannot ignore us any longer. And so, we come back from learning the Dragon Wren shout to find Alduin waiting for us, but now, instead of only Paarthurnax being in attendance, there are now other dragons in attendance as well. But why would that be the case, I hear you're asking? Because, as Odahviing tells us later, some of the dragons have already begun to question Alduin's lordship, and thanks to our change, that will now be more pronounced after he sent so many of his underlings to stop us, only for them to die. So now, there are a few other random dragons in attendance, here to see whether or not Alduin is still truly worth following. This would not only improve the showdown between you and Alduin by giving you an audience, it also raises the stakes of the fight immensely. Now, losing means more thematically than just approaching the fight wrong. Due to everything we've set up so far with this one change, losing means reasserting Alduin's lordship and subjugating the people of Skyrim to his whim. If you win though, and you will since this is a video game after all, instead of Alduin vanishing and then you have to follow him to Sovngarde, you've now sparked a civil war within the dragons themselves. Now, rather than doing the impossible and assaulting Alduin's personal stronghold by yourself, you now have a number of dragons at your back aiding you in getting to the portal to Sovngarde so you can finish Alduin off before he returns and tries to kill you once again. And doing this means that the final act of the main quest no longer feels like an afterthought. Instead, it's the turning of the tide, as after being constantly assaulted throughout the entire main quest, you begin to turn the dragons against Alduin, and with Paarthurnax's aid, can turn them towards the peaceful solution. This also means that, rather than Paarthurnax imposing his will upon the dragons like Alduin did, the dragons are actively choosing to side with you and Paarthurnax due to Alduin's failings. It makes for a stronger story, and opens up a lot of potential for future Radiant quests that could focus on either hunting or helping those who still try and follow Alduin's way. Back to the main quest though. You fly to Skaldalfin on the back of one of your dragons that was present at the fight with others in tow, beginning your assault on the stronghold. This version also skips the dragon capturing quest, because that was kind of stupid anyway, as Paarthurnax should have already known where Skaldalfin was from his time as Alduin's general. Anyway, you and your dragon allies fight through the armor of Draugr, dragons, and their commander in Narkrin in order to get to the portal. You know that it's only a matter of time before more of Alduin's allies arrive to try and retake the portal, and so the battle becomes a race against time to get there. You get to the portal, you enter Sovngarde, and the rest of the main story plays out as normal. You defeat Sun, meet up with the ancient heroes, and together you defeat Alduin once and for all, and fulfill your destiny as the Dragonborn. And then, upon returning to Nirn, Tamriel, and the Throat of the World, you're greeted by the dragons same as before, except now there's a mixture of faces amongst them, some old, some new, but with the defeat of Alduin, most of the dragons now fall in line and are willing to follow Paarthurnax's path, not as overlords, but as beings living in harmony with Skyrim and her people. And thanks to that small change in the characterization of the dragons, not only does this result in a better paced, more tension-filled story, but it has also fleshed out the dragons as legitimate threats to your quest against Alduin and to the people of Skyrim. It then makes the two fights against Alduin and their fallout feel much more earned, as this time around we know from first-hand experience the effects our actions have had on the mindset of the dragons and shapes how the Dragonborn will interact with them in the future. But that's my thoughts on how the main quest of Skyrim could be improved. While the story would still have some lacking elements such as the static characters you meet along the way, I believe that this one change, while it wouldn't fix all the shortcomings of the story, would vastly improve it and make it much more appealing for players to quest through. If you agree though, if you have your own thoughts on the matter, feel free to comment down below and discuss your thoughts on the main quest. This video is part of a new series I'm exploring where I aim to explore ways to improve the questlines in Skyrim. So if you want to see more of that, be sure to hit subscribe for more of these kinds of videos in the future. But until the next one guys, this has been the Sage as always, signing out.